Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're jumping into something probably inside, well, almost everything you use electronically, but maybe not something you think about much. Wafer glass, specifically the global market in 2025.
Yeah, exactly. We've got this recent market report we're using as a guide.
Right, and our mission really is to pull out the key stuff. What's driving this? Why should you care if you're interested in tech, manufacturing, the future of electronics?
Think of it like a foundational layer.
Yeah.
It's critical for semiconductors, electronics, basically the bedrock of our digital world,
Okay, so let's start with some numbers just to get a sense of scale. For 2025, the estimate is USD 548.24 million globally.
which is already pretty substantial.
It is, but here's the kicker. It's projected to soar to nearly USD 2.2 billion, 2189.90 million, precisely by 2033.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a compound annual growth rate, a CAGR of almost 19%, 18.90%. That's really impressive growth.
It absolutely is. That kind of jump tells you something big is happening. And the report points straight at, well, the semiconductor and electronics industries demanding more and more of it.
Makes sense. They're always pushing for more, aren't they?
Constantly.
Yeah.
Faster, smaller, more powerful.
So, where is this demand strongest? The report breaks it down by region. North America seems to be leading the pack currently.
That's right. Over 40% of the market share. For 2025, that's about USD 202.85 million. Still growing strong to around 17.2% CAGR predicted through 2033.
And within North America, the U.S. is the dominant force.
Oh, definitely. Around 160 million in 2025, going at 17%. But, Canada is significant too, 24 million, 18% growth. And Mexico, about 18.5 million, 17.7% growth. So the whole region's contributing.
Okay, moving across the Atlantic, what about Europe?
Europe's also a major player. Over
Okay.
30% share, looking at around $159 million in 2025. And their growth is actually slightly higher than North America's average, about 17.8%.
Interesting. Any particular countries standing out there?
Yeah, the report flags a few. The UK, for instance, is estimated at about 26.7 million, with a pretty robust 18.6% growth. Things like automotive, electronics, and telecom are big drivers there.
Okay.
And Germany, even bigger market size, roughly 31.5 million, growing at 18%. Similar drivers. Automotive's huge there, obviously.
Yeah.
France, Russia, others are all part of that picture, too.
So different strengths playing out regionally. Now, you mentioned faster growth somewhere else. Asia Pacific.
Yes. APAC. That's where things get really interesting. They hold about 23% share now, so smaller than North America or Europe,
Okay.
but 131.6 million in 2025.
Yeah.
But get this, the projected growth rate is almost 22%.
Mm-hmm.
21.9% CAGR. That's significantly faster than anywhere else.
Wow. Okay. What's fueling that kind of acceleration in APAC?
Well, but big part is China. Massive semiconductor manufacturing hub,
Right.
right? They're looking at over 55 million in 2025 market size, growing over 21%.
Right.
But it's not just China. India's growth is projected even higher, almost 24%. 23.8 to be exact, though, from a smaller base, around 13 million. Japan and South Korea are also key players, both growing over 20% annually. It really feels like the center of gravity for electronics manufacturing might be shifting, or at least expanding significantly there.
Fascinating. Okay, what about the other regions? The report covers them too, right?
It does. South America holds just over 5% of market, around $21 million in 2025, but still strong growth, nearly 20%. Brazil and Argentina are leading there, often linked to telecom and automotive development.
Uh-huh.
Then the Middle East, about 2% share, but similar strong growth, over 20%. Saudi Arabia and the UAE are highlighted, likely tied to their big pushes for technological innovation.
Right, diversification efforts.
Exactly. And Africa, smallest share, around 1%, about 12 million in 2025, but still growing fast, over 19% AGRR. South Africa and Nigeria mentioned specifically, reflecting that increasing digitalization across the continent.
So a truly global market, but with definitely some hotspots. Let's switch gears a bit. What kind of wafer glass are we talking about? The report mentions different types. Quartz seems dominant.
Yes, quartz is currently the main type used. And there are good reasons for that. It's got great thermal stability, doesn't warp easily with heat. It's chemically resistant, which is vital in semiconductor processing.
Yeah.
And it's optically transparent.
Okay.
So all those properties make it ideal for semiconductor manufacturing, but also for things like MEMS, those tiny microelectromechanical systems and the high-frequency stuff needed for 5G and AI.
Gotcha. But quartz isn't the only game in town. Borosilicate glass is mentioned as the fastest growing type.
That's right. Borosilicate is gaining traction. It offers Really good mechanical strength. It doesn't expand much with temperature changes, low thermal expansion, and it holds up well against chemicals.
So slightly different properties.
Yeah, and that makes it suitable for a different range of applications, maybe consumer electronics, automotive sensors, some medical devices.
Yeah.
It's also often seen as potentially more cost-effective than quartz for certain uses. So it's carving out its niche and growing quickly.
Okay, that makes sense. What about the size of these wafers? Diameter matters, apparently. 300 millimeters the standard or the dominant size right now.
Correct. 300 millimeters is kind of the workhorse. The larger surface area means you can get more chips out of a single wafer. That leads to higher yields, better cost efficiency, essential for mass-producing things like memory chips, microprocessors.
But bigger is better, it seems. The report says wafers above 300 millimeter are the fastest growing segment here.
Well, better in terms of pushing the limits for next-gen tech. Think cutting-edge AI processors, massive data center components, 5G infrastructure. To make those economically viable at scale, manufacturers are looking towards even larger wafers.
But that must be challenging.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
It requires huge R&D investment, entirely new manufacturing lines, handling techniques. It's a big leap.
Okay, now let's talk applications. How is this glass actually used? Wafer packaging is the biggest application.
Absolutely. Those semiconductor chips are incredibly delicate. Packaging protects them, connects them to the outside world. And we're seeing more advanced techniques here, like wafer-level packaging or WLP.
WLP.
Yeah, especially things like fan-out wafer-level packaging, FOWLP. It basically lets you create more connections in a smaller footprint. Super important for, smartphones, wearables, automotive stuff where space is tight.
Right. But the fastest growing application is something called TGZ interposer. Sounds complex.
It is quite technical. TGV stands for through glass via. Imagine drilling tiny microscopic holes through the glass wafer
Okay.
and filling them with conductive material. These act like little vertical highways for electrical signals, allowing for really dense connections between chip layers.
Ah, I see, like building skyscrapers instead of just single-story buildings for chips.
That's a pretty good analogy, actually. It's key for advanced stuff. MEMS, again, are devices for communications, and especially for stacking chips in what we call 2.5D or 3D ICs. Think high-performance computing, AI, data centers, 5G. They increasingly rely on this kind of interconnect density.
Got it. So who's using all this glass? End-use segments. Semiconductors is the dominant one, which seems obvious, I guess.
Yeah, that's pretty straightforward. The semiconductor industry consumes the lion's share because wafer glass is just fundamental to making chips from processing to packaging. And with 5G, IoT, AI all booming, the demand just keeps growing.
But the fastest growing end use is MEMS.
Yep.
We keep mentioning them. Where else are these showing up?
They're everywhere, really. The accelerometer in your phone that flips the screen, that's a MEMS. The gyroscope in a drone. MEMS. Pressure sensors in car tires, tiny mirrors and projectors.
Right.
They need precise packaging, and wafer glass provides that protection, stability, sometimes optical clarity if it's, say, a light sensor. So as we embed more sensors into everything, MEMS demand goes up, and so does the need for a wafer glass in their packaging.
Okay, final segmentation. Industry verticals. Consumer electronics leads the pack. No surprise there, maybe.
Not really. Just think of the sheer volume of smartphones, tablets, wearables, smart home gadgets produced every year. They all need sensors, displays, processors, all using wafer glass in some form. It's a massive driver.
And the fastest growing vertical, let me guess, automotive.
You got it. Automotive again. It really highlights this massive shift happening in cars. Autonomous driving tech, EVs, connected car features, they all rely heavily on advanced electronics.
Sensors, LiDAR, ADAS systems.
Exactly. All that stuff needs sophisticated chips and sensors, often packaged using wafer glass. So as cars become, computers on wheels, this sector's demand is just taking off.
So let's pull back a bit. What are the main forces, the big drivers, pushing this market forward, according to the report?
Well, we've touched on most of them. That growing adoption of wafer-level packaging, especially in consumer electronics, is key.
Maybe making things smaller, more powerful.
Then there's the expansion of IoT and wearables, just more devices needing these components. And as we just discussed, the big one, increasing use in automotive electronics for ADs, EVs, all that jazz.
Okay. But it can't all be smooth sailing. What are the roadblocks, the restraints?
Good point. The report mentions two main ones. First, high manufacturing costs, making this glass super pure, super flat, defect-free. It's complex and expensive.
So that might limit its use in some areas.
Potentially, yeah. Especially in more cost-sensitive applications. The second restraint is handling challenges, particularly with ultra-thin glass.
Ah, right. We want thinner devices, so we need thinner glass, but that makes it really fragile to work with.
Exactly. It requires very specialized, very careful handling and processing to avoid breakage. It's a real technical challenge.
Okay. What about future trends? Where is this heading?
Well, one clear trend is the move towards that ultra-thin wafer glass we just talked about. Despite the challenges, the demand for sleeker, lighter devices is pushing manufacturers to adopt it.
And the other trend?
More use in those advanced packaging techniques, the fan-out, the 3D integration, TGV interposers. As we cram more power into smaller spaces, these advanced methods, often relying on wafer glass, become more critical.
Before we wrap up, the report mentions some key companies, right? The competitive landscape.
It does. Names like HOTT, AGC Inc., Corning Incorporated. These are major players in specialty glass and material science.
And they're actively innovating.
Definitely. The report gives a couple of recent examples. Corning launched some ultra-low TTV glass carrier wafers back in 2022.
Ultra-low TTV, what's TTV?
Total thickness variation. Basically how uniform the thickness is across the whole wafer. For advanced chips, you need it incredibly flat and consistent. So ultra-low TTD means very, very precise manufacturing. Crucial for things like 5G components.
Got it. And Seishoti.
Seishoti Korea started commercializing borosilicate glass carriers specifically for that fan-out wafer-level packaging in 2023. Shows that borosilicate is really making inroads into those advanced applications.
Okay, so summing it all up, the wafer glass market in 2025 looks really dynamic. Strong growth overall, driven by huge trends in electronics, automotive, semiconductors.
Absolutely. Different regions growing at different paces, different technologies like quartz versus borosilicate or standard versus advanced packaging all playing out. It's a foundational market, but it's definitely not static.
Yeah, seems like a lot is happening under the surface, so to speak. Which brings us to a final thought for you, the listener.
Given how fast material science moves and this constant hunger for smaller, faster, more powerful tech, what's next?
Right. Could there be future breakthroughs in glass itself, or maybe even totally different materials that could disrupt this whole picture? And what other applications might pop up for wafer glass that we haven't even considered yet?
Something to think about. It might seem like just a piece of glass, but it's clearly enabling a lot of innovation.
Indeed. Plenty to mull over. Thanks for diving into this with us today.